Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the second day of the Digital Banking Symposium. Thank you for tuning back in. Our second agenda of the day is on AI and the future of banking. With the growth of fintech, more consumers are changing the way they conduct their banking activity and bringing disruption to the banking sector. In this session, you will find out more about virtual banking and how AI will rewrite the future of the investment industry. Participants will also be able to see how AI is used in the sector to enhance the customer experience and enable automation on back-end tasks. Today we have two speakers with us, Associate Professor Keith B. Carter, Director of NUS Fintech Lab, and Pei Wen Tan, Head of Financial Services Industry, Google Cloud, Japan, Asia Pacific. And without further ado, I will now hand my time over to our speakers.
Hello, good morning, everyone. So glad to be here with you and joined by Pei Wen Tan from Google. We also have Pei Wen Tan, who is our National University of Singapore Fintech SG recent graduate, and Donn Yam, who is also from NUS Fintech SG recent graduate. Thanks all for joining with me. I'm excited today to share with you about what's happening in terms of fintech and other ways that we can actually make a difference in people's lives. And that's what this is about. It's not simply all about us. So let me take you into, who is this Keith Carter guy? I'm speaking first with you. Why is he talking to us about fintech and maybe how AI can help us and what have you, and maybe reframing positions and jobs? Well, this slide is who I am. We're all made up of data. The big words mean more to me, but the small words are also who my background and experiences as well. And there's a couple key words that we'd like for you to keep in mind as we go through the presentation today. You could sit back and have coffee and just maybe not use whatever we share with you, but we really hope that you'll know, decide, and act. We share with you a few things today so you know more. You can make some decisions about how you'd like to use it, and then ultimately you'll take action. In addition, the key word here is actionable intelligence, a different AI, an AI that really makes us want to use this device all the time. It's about having the right information in the right person's hands at the right time in order to improve outcomes. This is why we carry this device. We never want to leave home without knowing, oh, there's an emergency at work or home, and we immediately would want to respond to it. That's going to play into an important part in the transformation we're going through. This type of transformation in fintech, though, is very personal. My father-in-law here, he has been running a chicken stall at Tiongbaru Market for the past 70 years. And I love, his passion. He's in his 80s. He likes to go there and meet customers and everything. He's still into that. But COVID-19 came. And the risk became that if he in his 80s collects money from someone who was sneezing or coughing or something, or just wasn't feeling as well as they could have been that day, that his very life could be at risk. So digital transformation, adding a QR code was so key. And thankfully, we were able to work with Nets and now he's able to take in a QR code and use PayLah and other systems as well. In his 80s, using digital transformation and fintech, awesome. We can really see how things are being made possible. There's been other pioneers in banking, though. Years ago, people used to type. Instead of writing, they would type the memos. And then we had other pioneers, a next generation that came in and put in mainframes into the computing so that we can have more systems faster, be able to respond and grow even bigger. Today, there's an even larger transformation. These new pioneers are data-driven companies. In 2001, we had the top 5 market cap companies be traditional companies. Citibank was in there. Walmart. But just 15 years later, the top 5 market cap companies were all data-driven companies. Companies that didn't manufacture anything. Companies that could send information and sell what they're making over the internet. They were growing faster than any other time. And in just a few years after that, by September 2020, these data-driven companies had gone from the market cap, let's say, of Apple, 600 billion to 1.8 trillion. Alphabet, Google had gone up. Microsoft from 400 billion up to 1.5 trillion in just a few years. What were we thinking that the jobs could remain the same from 2001 to today if the largest, fastest growing companies are all data driven? They weren't the traditional Citibanks or Exxons. What's something interesting happened though? There was a 5th company here. They're the top 5 market cap companies. Who is that? And I'd love for you to take a quick poll just to see in the audience how many of you might be aware of who the top, in the number 5 spot, that market cap company would be. Moderator, can you share the poll for people to participate in? And you should see on your screen, can you guess which one? And we just take about 20 seconds here. It's very fast. We don't want you to do research on this. Just take your first guess. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Great. Moderator, if you could close the poll, that would be fantastic. And then we'll take a look at what people voted for. If you voted Alibaba, you were right. Alibaba came in, another data-driven company, Chinese-based company. Now, Chinese companies have been on the top 5 market cap before, PetroChina, ICBC, but now Alibaba came ahead, leaped ahead of Facebook as well. Key point though, largest market cap company in China, a data-driven one. So relevance, why were they winning? Well, relevance is so key. They were able to look at customers and analyze, when do I need to make the right offer? Timely and pertinent offers. This has a higher response rate, more than 30%. Whereas if you just send a random offer, many of us receive, for example, in WhatsApp, that spam message, would you like a loan? And what do we want to do? Well, how do we feel about that brand? We can't stand it, right? You want to block that number and maybe even spam them back. So generic offers made at the wrong time, consumers really don't like. In addition, what do banks really sell? They sell a lifestyle product. Wouldn't you like this new home? And isn't the home always looking very nice? But of course, what's being sold there is a loan and a mortgage to buy that home. Wouldn't you like to send your child to college? Or Harvard, perhaps? And by the way, here's a loan for you to enable that, right? Banks have always been sellers of dreams. So knowing where in the customer's life cycle they are means that banks can be more accurate in terms of targeting and sharing that. And that's what the most data-driven companies are doing. But here's something interesting that's coming up. The core proposition of banks. Well, what do banks traditionally need to do? They hold the data for companies, for customers as well. They facilitate the movement of money. They enable that the money that you perhaps own is a legitimate view. I have a DBS account. I've never had them say, hey, Prof. Carter, here's some extra money for you. No, it's a legitimate representation of the value that I've earned and put into the bank. If any business is able to deliver all 3 of these qualities, it already functions as a bank. So there's new banks coming into place. The non-banks. And the central bank regulators are wondering, do we regulate the name or do we regulate the function? Let's look at Grab, for example, 187 million users. And they provide some consumer lending now. And they have an awesome wallet. So when I fly from Singapore to Hanoi, I get out and I go and get into a taxi, I don't have to, change money. I don't have to take that time. Of course, I am paying an exchange rate, and Grab is participating in that now. They don't just do taxis, they do banking. They have all these services here for us. We remember how they've changed the taxi landscape on a rainy day like today. If you had to rush to a meeting, wow, it was hard. But then in addition, they do this pay later, which allows you to spend first and pay a little bit later. Sounds like almost a credit card, something where you get 30 days to pay back. Wow, a non-bank has jumped in on the interest and fee income opportunities. The three-step plan for success by these non-banks has been establishing a user base, taxis, scaling through other services, movies and Grab food and everything else, and then monetizing the data insights, creating a new P&L line that wasn't even there. And I wonder about what we can be doing as banks. Ads becomes Grab's $245 million cash cow. This was reported back in February of this year. You can imagine that this has even increased because more companies have gone on to Grab food. More companies are diving in. Think about the data that's there. If I order Grab food and I get Thai food, they don't just know the whole receipt, which is what we see in Visa, MasterCard, right? They know that I got a particular soup, I got a noodle, I know exactly what I purchased. And so then there's another Thai food restaurant, they can accurately represent. We have this customer that likes this. He's never bought from you through Grab food, but he might. Price point, type of dishes, quality, he might. That's great data. Ant Financial looks at it a different way. They said, we want to enable banks. So they're a virtual banking company that brings in the ability to do loans at scale. We heard this yesterday, right? Where you can get a loan so quickly just by signing up and them doing a social score. And their non-performing loan is lower. Why? And why are some other fintechs having a tougher time? Ant is playing in an entire ecosystem, whereas some fintechs play just in their own, where perhaps the impact of not paying off your loan isn't as big. Whereas with Ant Financial, there could be a challenge if you don't pay back. Investments, insurance, and other things are all enabled by them. Fedora Bank, we heard yesterday from the founder, where he shared about their vision, making a loan in just 10 minutes at $50,000. How long do these type of loans for 50,000 euros, make here in Singapore by traditional banks? And then we have bank assurance, right? Well, Sing Life has an app where I've had my students go in. They've been able to immediately sign up for life insurance. Now, I loved what DBS did during the coronavirus, where we were about to fly over to Vietnam, and in February or so, there was a great pop-up that said, would you like to buy insurance, coronavirus insurance for you and your family? And literally, I just had a few clicks and I was insured. That's the type of innovation and straight-through processing that's necessary. In fact, fintech is a transformation that's a force multiplier. And I hope that chief financial officers hear this very clearly. It's a force multiplier. This is not the time to cut headcount. This is the time to take the 5 people that are in the department, give them this transformation technology so they can be like 25, because we were never delighting customers to the extent that they had expected us to do. And here's the challenge. Let's say that you're a CPOL, which is a large conglomerate in Thailand. They own 11,000 locations, $12 billion revenue in US. And they do all these different businesses. They have lots of subsidiaries, and they're regularly challenged by something I know many of you might be. They have to go into systems and Excel and then create a PowerPoint. They have to go into all these different places, email people, and create a PowerPoint to represent how business is going. This is where robotic process automation, really the new AI, the automation that can make such a difference in our business today, right now, And I'd love for you to actually try this out. Because I know that a number of us, when we receive an email from our boss, hey, what's the status of CPAL? In the NUS Fintech Lab, we said, let's make a model for this conglomerate in Thailand. Let's show them. And so one of my team members, the head of engineering there, came up with this system where the system will respond back, looking at multiple sources of data, even the market, and say, this is where the situation is. We go and look at the trading market, we look at multiple Excel files, bring it into, these are actually Google Sheets, we bring it into the Google Slides file in order to create it out, and then send it over a PDF that is customized, that's up to date, that's been translated, and the sentences written by the computer. This is all possible today, and I'd love for you to try it. I know the moderator has already put in there for you to be able to try this out. You could send a note to fintechlabrobot@gmail.com, and so we'll put in the subject, and then you'll get a response back as it goes through, looks over what's happening with CPAL, and sends you an update on it. This is what you'll get back. Slides that would take you some time. Wording that would, again, have you writing this as well, but the computer's writing it. And you also get back this dashboard, filled in also by the computer. So we can, by using automation, by using AI-driven automation, we can spend less time formatting, finding data. Computers are really good at that. And in fact, this was the old way, right? Getting a wet ink signature so that someone can approve a loan. Okay, well, does this signature look right? And then sending it over, there's cost to this. The sales are what they are, that you can only work so fast. You can't do 24/7 business, or perhaps not so easy to issue a loan on the weekends. The new way, though, is bringing in the robotic process first. That's getting the loan online. The person asks for it. You look in their Singapore, My Info, like Sopan and Du talked about yesterday. That was a key linchpin, having that information about the KYC, the customer online. And then you can get more sales because it's automatic and it's 24/7. And then you have to hire a person in order to do the robotic process automation. You have to hire in to do the digitalization. You have to hire to make sure everything is running correctly. But you can hire because you have more sales, you're delighting more customers, you're issuing more loans in seconds like Ant Financial, or in minutes like Fedor. World Economic Forum highlighted this, that as we look at automation and AI, there's going to be growing job demand, not decreasing. The decreasing jobs, data entry, administration, etc. 50% of all employees are going to need to be reskilled. But the growing demand is the process automation, right? Being good at digital transformation, coming alongside of these systems and delighting the customer. By doing so, you'll make a difference, not just to your business, not just to your customers, but you'll be looked at by the next generation as the pioneers that push forward. And we can make a difference together. My father-in-law, he's depending, and he depended on the people that had the foresight to think about getting nets, getting a QR code in place, allowing for digital payment to occur. And thank goodness a lot of that was already there, so that when the challenge of COVID-19 came, he could continue to do his dream business that he's always had, but safely. So technology doesn't only talk about making more money and all these things. I said it's not just all about business, but it's also about improving people's lives. Thanks for listening. And now I'm going to turn it over to Thurian, who's going to let you share a bit about what Google has done in helping the financial services industry. Thurian, over to you.
Thank you, Keith. A very insightful presentation. Over the next few minutes, I want to take you through a journey of how we see AI being applied to help improve the user experience in banks and how the digital bank revolution is changing the way we interact with banks and how they interact with us. I'm Pei Wen Tan, FSI Advisory Lead for Japan and Asia Pacific at Google. I want to just look back at some of the philosophies at Google just before we get into the presentation. The number one focus at Google is to focus on the user, and all else will follow. Following this tenet, we know we can succeed by putting the user at the center of everything we do. A second philosophy is that we see being great just isn't good enough. Great is a starting point, not an end point. We set ourselves goals we know we can't reach yet, because we know that by stretching to meet them, we can get further than we expected. And that's how the banks of tomorrow need to think to disrupt the banks of today. And in fact, the banks of today need to think to maintain their own positions. Data, as Keith alluded to earlier, is king. It underpins the success in meeting customer objectives and improving the user experience. Banks need to have a holistic view of all touch points, inside and outside of their direct control. Banks need to give up some of their ownership of their customers as they move into a platform ecosystem, which they find very hard to do. And it's a very unnatural reaction from the banks. But as we move to a platform economy, we have no choice in this matter. We need to work in a partnership and share the data and provide the user experience that our customers are demanding every day. Data has a massive multiplier effect on the user experience. Let's take an example, how we can enhance the user experience. We can apply AI to the data that's sitting right in our inbox. Let's take, for example, we've booked a trip on Expedia. Most banks can't make any tangible insights of this information from the credit card transaction. They see the dollar amount, they know potentially the merchant, but that's it. But they're not really understanding what's inside the transaction. And what does that lead to? The generic experience. How many of us get these irrelevant SMSs from our banks that don't match our user experience expectations? What can we do to personalize this experience? Provide the hyper-personalization and the frictionless experience that we as users are now demanding. Well, we personalize it through technology and AI to make it a delightful, easy experience, and one that supports our journey, one that helps us have a great journey. So, as an example, we can take the data from our travel schedule, send it to our bank, and from that, we can extract the data and start making automated actions. For example, we can look at the financial services component interweaving with our actual trip. That's what customers are looking for. We can improve fraud detection through knowing the travel route and times and opening the card for usage internationally to sit within those times. And in fact, extend that because we know real-time flight data. And if our flight's delayed, we can extend the usage of that card overseas for that delay period. We can automate all aspects of that trip through the data that's sitting already in the bank's information pool. We can take the user experience further by then providing data-driven insights and offers that benefit the user, such as currency accounts for the country that we're traveling to, favorable exchange rates, spending limit achievement rewards to drive further spend and unlock more offers. We can even look at providing microinsurance for specific activities. For example, if you took your rental car off-road or outside of a geographical jurisdiction that the rental agreement covers, we can put an offer out straight away and say, look, for the next 24 hours, would you like to be covered for this activity? You could hit go, debits straight away from your account, your credit card account, and you'll be sold a new service, but yet it's something that you want and need and very relevant to you. It enhances your user experience. And all of these are possible today using the Google platforms. The data insights are all there to be mined and made sense of, which will enhance that customer experience. The location data is so important and can be easily verified by a confirmed transaction, e.g. the swipe at the hotel on check-in, and your phone location. This provides a confirmed location point and user identification. And what we can do with that is endless. We can look at providing offers that are tailored to you as a consumer. For example, if it's a densely populated city, let's say we're in Singapore or Hong Kong, we can draw a 10-minute walking boundary from that location and look at what offers or suggestions match the customer preferences, which, by the way, should have automatically been identified from their historical spending. It could be fine dining, it could be shopping, it could be bars, it could be attractions. All of these things are data points that exist today in the transaction systems, inside and outside of the bank. And by collating that together and making a tangible insight through the AI platform, we can be very relevant to the consumers. The spend patterns based on these locations can then be used to identify further offers in that trip so that you're becoming even more personalized during the trip and the journey. Google already uses AI and ML in its applications. Its applications such as Gmail have the ability to pull interactions together. We have GPay that allows instant issuance of cards. There's Google Maps and the Google Marketing Platform that help with location identification and then can take your search to your location to an experience that you want. And all of these are available today, and all of them can be combined together in whichever building blocks that you want to provide that user experience and the ability to process masses of data to give you that hyper-personalized experience. I'm just going to touch on a few different customers of ours that are using our platform. First, let's look at Monzo. They run on the Google Cloud, and they're one of the leading challenger banks in the UK. They've increased their cost efficiencies drastically running on the platform. But what it does allow them to do is stay agile and responsive to consumer demands with much faster analytics, which are self-service and allows the Monzo users to accelerate their business decisioning through the analytics that is available. A second example I'd like to talk about is HSBC. With 38 million customers in 67 countries, they are spending their time now focusing on the customer experience, not spending time focusing on technology and infrastructure, but how to improve that customer experience through mining the 100 petabytes of data that exists within HSBC on a global basis. That immense amount of scale requires immense amount of compute power, which is where the Google Cloud Platform comes in place to support HSBC. And the last customer I want to talk about, which is a great innovator, is BBVA. They continue to transform by creating new experiences with Google Cloud. It's one of the leaders of digital innovation and open banking among financial institutions, and has leveraged Google's ML expertise and infrastructure to generate unique insights for their customers. Together with Google Cloud, they've developed new digital tools, such as predicting transactions to enable their customers to make more reliable financial decisions. They've also using G Suite to help employees collaborate over 30 countries and work in an agile and collaborative way. And all of those provide to their own employees as well as the customers the data and AI technologies by default in the platforms that they use. Thank you for your time. I hope these insights have been useful. Over to you, Keith.
Oh yes, thank you so much, Dorian. That was really interesting and brings to life a lot of things we're looking forward to. I would love to bring on now our guests also that are from the NUS Fintech SG program, Donn and Pei Wen. Hey all. So they're going to take you through the learning journey. What is it like to move from traditional industry and so forth into fintech? So Donn has a supply chain background, and interestingly, we were having a discussion. You know that little area on the bus where you can put a pram? He was helping to work on that to make it come to life. And Pei Wen was originally in banking, so she knows she's one of your colleagues, you know, from that, and certainly said, I want to learn more about fintech and see what's next, and is now working at a fintech. So over to both of you to share your stories to inspire all of us.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Keith. Okay, so now I guess Donn, maybe you'll do a start first.
Yep. Okay. Good morning, everyone. A little bit more about myself. I'm a father of 4, all girls except for the first 3, and I'm passionate about life, growth, and balance. So, like what Prof said, I graduated from the business faculty in NUS and spent most of my career doing supply chain and logistics in both the private and public sector. Prior to joining the fintech program, I had almost no coding experience. I was more of a technology end user, familiar with your Microsoft tools like Excel, Word, PowerPoint, that sort of stuff, ERP systems like SAP. But I've always been a curious person and have varied interests. So when I learned about the fintech program, I became extremely interested because this program is really packed with a lot of content. We had the opportunity to learn many different things, from HTML, CSS, JavaScript, Python, your SQL and non-SQL databases, Solidity, learning about blockchain, smart contracts, and even algo trading. We also had great guest lecturers from the industry who shared about the work challenges and rewards in fintech. I remember feeling apprehensive and not knowing what to expect. When we first started the program in August, I had no background in coding or computing, and I wasn't sure if I could cope with all the content that was shared with us. I must warn you that if you are thinking about taking up this course, there is definitely a lot of content, and you must be prepared to put the work in order to get the value. The faculty is very helpful, and of course, the great thing for my batch was that we had a diverse bunch of friendly, interesting, fun, and helpful people from different backgrounds, and we all helped each other to get through the course. The other advice I have is not to be discouraged if things seem difficult. It's normal for things to be difficult when you're first starting out, and of course, things that are worth doing badly at first. You probably don't remember the details, but I'm sure that you failed many times when, as a young child, you were first learning to stand. And I'm very sure you never gave up trying just because you kept falling, right? Then after mastering standing, you advanced to walking, running, and now you can have a lot more skills, knowledge, and abilities. I remember the feelings of frustration when sometimes I just couldn't get the code to work. Then I tried different things, consulted with my classmates, adopted a DevOps mindset, and eventually managed to push through. This was a learning environment and also the best opportunity to make use of mistakes and to learn from them. I find it helpful to think of the mistakes as experiments whose outcomes can guide future action. Of course, to learn new useful things, it is sometimes helpful to unlearn what is not so useful. It is good to examine your beliefs and identify those thoughts that are holding you back now and discard them. Then you replace them with a can-do, can-learn attitude, and most important of all, a realistic timeline of when you will be proficient. Learning coding is like learning a new language. People sometimes have the mistaken belief that young children learn languages faster. But do you know that studies have shown that a 3-year-old and a 30-year-old starting to learn a new language, if they spend the same amount of time, the 30-year-old will learn faster? So as mid-careers, you have a special advantage. Work and life experience, which should provide you with the wisdom and ability to learn faster. Studies have also shown that people generally underestimate the time needed to learn a new language. So that is why you need to set a realistic timeline. Based on the BBC report I just heard recently, that number is around 500 hours of deliberate practice. Of course, the number varies from person to person, but I'm very sure that you'll do much better at what you're learning after 500 hours, right? So let's do some simple math. If you dedicate just 1 hour a day, 5 days a week for deliberate practice, it should take you about 2 years. And if you spend 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, it should take you about 2.5 months. So one of the most useful lessons from Professor Keith for me was about actionable intelligence and these 3 words: know, decide, act. And the order, of course, is crucial. If you're thinking of taking a fintech journey, I strongly encourage you to consider the Fintech SG program with NUS and hope that you too will be able to benefit as much as, if not more from this program. There really is a lot of content in this program. Your role then is to provide the context about how this content is applicable for you and what you're going to do. A chance to practice know, decide, and act. Thank you for letting me share my thoughts with you. And the last thing I want you to know is that I plan to live forever or die trying. Now over to Pei Wen to share more of the banking experience.
All right. Thank you, Donn, for sharing. It was great. So just a brief introduction about myself. I'm Pei Wen, and I graduated from the NUS Fintech program back in October. So I have an arts degree from NUS. As you know, I went to this fintech program and I only have an arts degree. I don't even have computer science degree. So I was formerly from corporate and transaction banking with the local and foreign banks for more than 10 years. And after a while, I decided that it was time for me to take a career break and spend more time with my children. And after that, about a year after that, I felt that I wanted to go back to the workforce, but COVID struck. And it was very, very challenging in those kind of environments to secure employment. So rather than just sitting around and waiting, right, I took on a short-term contract and I searched for courses to attend. So that was also the time that I stumbled upon the NUS Fintech program. So I read the prospectus and I felt that it was something that I can explore, given that technology is rapidly evolving in the banking ecosystem and everywhere else. No doubt everyone was actually jumping on the bandwagon after PM Lee announced about being a smart nation back then in 2017. We really have COVID to thank for it. It accelerated the entire process across all the industries. The banking industry has also evolved dramatically over the past decade. I've personally been involved in the setup of new internet banking portals, which has a more pleasing user interface, and also the transition from manual payments to electronic payments. We were even able to open and close accounts online. All this points to the fact that we can't run away from technology. They are taking over the mundane things that used to be done by humans. So, how do humans actually come into play in the future? We will be the ones who define the processes and the ones who tell the robots what to do. We are the ones who think of ways to connect to different platforms, and that is where our value lies in the near future. We need to change and we need to upgrade our skill sets, especially in the fintech space. I was fortunate enough to be accepted into the program, which has been nothing short of amazing. The students in this course actually comes from very diverse backgrounds. We have fresh grads, mid-career people, and also established individuals in their own industries. The contents of this course is pretty much holistic. There are 3 levels. You first get to understand the fundamentals, and then which is like the design thinking and the processes, and then you proceed to the next level of creating databases, and then you move on to combine what you actually to implement it in the front end. So far, I've learned SQL, non-SQL databases, APIs, blockchains, etc. And it actually complements the knowledge that I have in the banking and financial services sector. So throughout this course, we forged strong bonds, not only with the lecturers, but also our batchmates. Everyone is eager to share and we all learn together. So some of us actually even offer to help our other batchmates so that we can actually all learn together. You're just reinforcing your learning by teaching them. So we, regardless of a background, whatsoever, so we just contribute whatever we have. We ask silly questions and we do not judge each other. But to be honest, I've not mastered coding like what actually Donn actually mentioned about coding. So I can only copy certain codes but programming itself is a language that is not something that you can pick up in just like 2 months, which is the entire duration of the course. I mean, would you be able to learn a new language like German like in just 2 months? It actually takes daily practice. So don't go in with expectations that you'll turn out to be a programming whiz at the end of it. So in essence, I find that this course has given me a very clear picture of what fintech is going to be about, at least in the near future, and what is to be expected in the fintech space. So how you want to further grow and develop it is entirely up to you. You are also encouraged to seek employment via traineeships, etc., to actually complement our learning and to apply it in real life. And I'm glad to say the lecturers have been pretty helpful in this aspect as well. So some of us have managed to secure jobs, some are still trying, some prefer not to, and some of them actually brought back this skill set to apply in the current field of work. Whatever it is, as with all courses, go in with an open mind, and you'll realize that you're actually getting more than what you bargained for. The course will definitely not equip you with the skills to do full programming for sure, but it does let you know what are the technologies involved and how everyone is jumping on the bandwagon to make sure it's successful. The fact that you have signed up for this digital banking symposium today shows that you are taking steps to take charge of your own learning journey by learning more about fintech and how it's applicable to the world nowadays. So why not give this a try? So last but not least, thank you for listening in. I'll pass it over to Keith now.
Keith, you're mute.
Thank you so much, Pei Wen and Donn. I'm really glad that to hear what you had to share, and they're going to come back into great. We can now open it up for questions as well. and to see what people may have that are listening in. If you have any questions about the learning journey or what's possible with automation, or even what type of jobs they're looking like in the future, by all means, there's an insight. I think if you're looking on the web browser, just below where there's a chat area, then below that is where you can ask a question. You just click on Ask Question, and we can see from there. So, any questions? Okay. Here's a question. What advice would you give us for considering what's the first step to take? I suppose that's in regards to what advice do you have in terms of taking a step to change your career or to start fresh? Donn or Pei Wen, do you want to answer that?
Okay, maybe I'll answer that. I think the first step to take for everyone is to actually believe in yourself. So it's like, if you don't believe that something is going to be beneficial to you, then definitely you're not ever going to take the first step forward. So you need to, first of all, really, you need to actually, okay, if you're working right now, probably you can take a look at processes and think, in a way, how can things be improved? And from there, you understand that technology is supposed to give us it's supposed to help us in our daily work as well. And that's how you'll be able to get across that I'll be actually taking the first step forward to go into the fintech industry. So Donn, maybe you want to add on? You're on mute.
Yeah, I agree with Pei Wen. I think it's important that you have an open mind, because you always think you will always these fears coming into your mind. Hey, maybe I shouldn't be doing this, or I'm too old, or this kind of thing. It's always the main fear is yourself. You are the one holding yourself back. So you need to believe in yourself, be open-minded, find out what's available. That's why what Prof. Keith said, know, decide, act. You need to find out more before you make a decision. Then you take the action. So the first step, again, have an open mind, find out what the options available. Then decide for yourself what you think is the best for you and take action in that direction.
Thank you, Donn. Thanks, Pei Wen, for that. Definitely agree with what both said. You know, what can you do first is what are you going to dream about? I would almost add, is there some, first of all, research? How do you get your dreams? You have to research, you have to look, you should read about what fintech is, what's going on there. So going to the SFA website is nice. Going to E27, reading some of the articles there. Of course, going to any of the vendors like Google, Microsoft, Amazon, they all have really interesting papers and such on there as well. We have some more questions coming in. Okay, so how would you advise more experienced members of a team to be more receptive of change and technology? Let's see, Thurian, can I ask you to take a look at this one?
Sure, Keith. Yeah, that's really interesting, because I think technology is changing, and we all know that's a constant, and it's actually changing at a very rapid pace. Even inside Google, it's changing all the time. And my only advice is you need to keep pace with it and take time out for your own learning, and take time out to really understand what's happening either in your own company or what's around you in your industry or your ecosystem that you work in, and take the time to learn. We're all better off if we spend that time and set it aside to learn. Most companies have no problem with it, because in fact, as an employee, you will contribute more to that company with that added learning. So I think one of the critical things is actually is to segregate that time off, put some learning time aside, and go and find it and learn. There's great tools, Coursera, for example, Coursera.org, great courses that sit there. A lot of them are free. They're sponsored by big companies like ours and others, and they provide those different certifications and courses. And it's a great starting point to start your learning journey.
And there's a question about, I heard one of the speakers is going to work in a fintech but has been in the banking industry. Pei Wen, can we direct this question to you to share?
Sure. So basically, working in a fintech and in a bank is actually very different because, as you know, a bank by itself actually has a lot of legacy systems and also a lot of processes. Whereas in the fintech, it's actually a much smaller setup, and you actually run the show on your own because everybody comes in to pour in ideas, right? I mean, in a bank itself, it's like there is a very long history behind it. So all the systems and processes are actually being built out over the years. So it will give you the knowledge on what you are to expect. But in fintech itself, it's actually something which is very, very much fast paced, and you're actually trying to run along together with technology compared to a bank when previously you're running whatever that your bosses tell you to do, and then people give you the information you're supposed to go and find out and just go and do it. But in a fintech, it's pretty much on your own. You do whatever you want, just do it. It comes with this kind of mindset. It's either do or die. Okay, so yep, that's all I have.
I definitely agree with fintechs. It's do or die, and I like what was said yesterday during this festival, which was the banks versus the fintechs. They have different types of employee mindsets. The employees that go into a fintech tend to be entrepreneurs themselves. They want to try something new. They have a do or die mindset. Hey, Wen, is that something you're seeing now as well as a follow-up question?
Yes, it's like currently in the current industry nowadays, it's like in fintech, everybody is just trying to get things out because they want to be successful, especially in this COVID environment, right? The more successful you are, the more visibility you'll get because COVID has actually provided us a very, very good platform. Okay, I wouldn't say platform, but it's actually a very good opportunity for us to showcase what we have. So if let's say for this entire COVID season, we are able to pull it off, I guess more or less we're going to be successful in the future.
That's great. And let's go then to the other aspect here. What is the successful? Let me go back over here. Wait, let me pick a different one. Well, how can companies balance between traditional banking and a digital bank? So I suppose if you're a traditional bank and then you wanted to transform yourself to be a digital bank, what are some of the things that can be done there? And Torian, I think I'll turn that to you.
Sure, thanks, Keith. That's a big question, not one that we're going to answer quickly in 5 minutes, but I'll try and summarize. I think traditional banking isn't going to go away tomorrow. What it is going to do is evolve rapidly to provide better insights to its customers, and it's going to have a modernization of its platforms and its technology to be able to do that. So what you'll find is digital banks will come in at a completely different angle and come in with data first. They'll come in with mobile first, and they'll work in a very much platform-based economy, and they'll look at different components being provided by different suppliers and bring that together. Now, traditional banks are doing exactly the same thing, actually. It's just they're doing it at a slightly slower pace, and we're not seeing it as an increment, as a step change, but we're seeing incremental changes. So what I will say is that both will converge, but they'll converge at different paces. And I think you will also find, depending on the type of bank that you have, that if you're a company and it's corporate banking, that relationship with your main bank will still occur. You'll have your priority bank and then your secondary banks, but that relationship will still occur because the depth and breadth of that relationship is so wide that it's difficult to change overnight. But the balance is that even traditional banks do need to look at their transformation and accelerate that to some extent to be able to compete.
I like the fact that they have to look at how they're going to be able to compete. I'm conscious of the time, and so I'd like to get just a wrap-up point for each one of the folks here, and maybe I'll give us each a couple minutes just to share your thoughts. So let me go to first, Donn. What would you advise people to, as they go into this time of transformation, jobs being lost and yet created according to the World Economic Forum, what would you give as your core advice?
I think we always need to know what's happening in the world. So you, like I said earlier, you have an open mind and you find out more. Essentially, there are a lot of opportunities out there, and as long as you're willing to learn, you're gonna start to master it. You practice it, you're gonna master it. If you think, oh no, I can't do anything about it, everything is I just go with the flow. But the flow is putting people out of jobs. So the good thing about technology is it helps free up your time to do more thinking. So I think it's a good opportunity to think of how you can add value, make use of technology as a leverage to help you do more with what you have. Yep.
Fantastic. Do more of what you have. I like that. Pei Wen?
Okay, basically, I think that it's like you need to know exactly what you want. And when you actually think of going into, like, you're just transiting from a different industry, right? Do not ever think that you are not well equipped to actually go for this job, because you do have transferable skills. Whatever it is, be whatever industry you come from, you do have a certain kind of skill set, which I think fintechs being a smaller setup, right? They are more open to taking in people with a particular skill set, with different kinds of skill set. It's not like they're so fixated on getting someone who is actually from this particular background or whatsoever. They are more open to discussions because you don't know what people are going to bring in with their mindset. So I would think that it's actually, first of all, you really need to change your mindset and think that you can do it. And instead of going and instead of thinking that, oh, you're just, people are not going to hire me because I do not have the specific set of skill set. To be honest, right, in the current world, right, there isn't anyone who is 100% match for every job role that is out there in the current market.
Thanks, Pei Wen. That's right. And Dorian?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right, Pei Wen. No one's a perfect match for any job, actually, because the jobs are changing and there's new jobs that we didn't know existed 5 years ago that are there today, right? And how can people be skilled for it? So really, I think focus on your attitude and your aptitude. Be open to learning, and find something that's interesting for you and focus on that. And you'll find that those jobs will then find you, and you will be actually qualified for those jobs without even knowing. I think it's really your attitude and aptitude are really the two things that will get you into your next. If you're mid-career and you want to move into another career, it's that will take you to the next step.
Thanks so much, everyone. And I'm just going to wrap up with this for us. We've heard me start off by saying this isn't just about what you should be doing. We'd love to make a call to action to you. And a couple of things. Number one, we've all agreed to share our LinkedIn addresses with you, so you'll see that in the chat. You're welcome to reach out to us via LinkedIn, and I saw some additional questions coming through so that you can follow up with us as well. But second, we have a finance and fintech literacy initiative that we've been kicking off to bring fintech literacy into the heartlands. And in particular, there's been some interesting studies done by OCBC. 1/3 of Singaporeans aren't investing, for example, and half of the sandwich generation is struggling to cope with their aging parents and children. How do they make the most of their money? And so if you're interested in your bankers, you're in the industry and so forth, we'd love for you to participate with us in building financial literacy, and then ultimately fintech literacy, and then ultimately going into the fintech ecosystem overall, either as startup founders or perhaps folks that are working in new roles as well. And so we really can make a difference together. You can, if you want to consider volunteering, we have here our QR code that you can go ahead and just take a screenshot of if you'd like to, or again, connect with us on LinkedIn, let us know. My students have sometimes said, you know what, Keith, by actually sharing things with others help me learn even more. So join us in doing this, and thanks a lot for joining us today. Best wishes, and enjoy the rest of the Digital Banking Symposium 2020. Have a great day.
Thank you very much to our speakers, Associate Professor Keith B. Carter and Mr. Thurain Tun, for their insightful sharing. Next up on the agenda, we have Dr. Eric Schaefer, who will be speaking on the topic of growing a UX career in the financial sector and how the UX field provides an amazing career opportunity. The session will be starting shortly at 11 a.m. Do click on the next session button located at the bottom of the screen and I will see you there shortly.